Well, I think Philo did kind of map out the essence and the direction that would ultimately end up in Trinitarianism, because he believed that there was the God, which was sort of an abstraction, and he was a Middle Platonist, and he liked to allegorize the Bible to make it pretty much Platonic and Stoic. And he took the liberty to do this because he thought that Moses was the source from which Plato drew, and which was apparently common among some of the Christians and Jews back then, though historically it's absurd, but they didn't know that, they couldn't know that. But at any rate, it was an abstract view of God. And how did God create? Well, there's a coincidence between Genesis, which has God saying, "Let there be light, let there be this." And in other words, there were words or commands, dabar, debarim in Hebrew, same thing, word or command. And so that fit with the notion of the logos, the word from ultimately from Heraclitus, a pre-Socratic. This notion was that of proportionality in the universe. What keeps things running on an even keel? Like, why do the seasons follow one another in the same order? When autumn comes, why do all the leaves not fall at the same time, but it's stretched out? Why does all the water in the world never freeze simultaneously? And why doesn't the world completely burn up sometime? Well, it can't, because there's this kind of regulating principle, the logos. The Stoics borrowed this, and they said, well, the logos is the essence of the god Zeus, whom they had abstracted. And of course, some Hellenistic Jews thought that Zeus and Yahweh were the same thing anyway. Some Jews now. The Epistle of Aristeas says that. Let's see. So Philo says, okay, God created by the logos, which was pretty much the same as Sophia, or Chokhmah in Hebrew, the word, the wisdom of God that was with him in creation, and seems to have been thought of as an instrument of creation. You find that in the wisdom of Solomon, in Proverbs chapter 8, I think it is, and in Sirach and so forth. So and then actually there were multiple instantiations of the logos, or the word. One sort of emanated the other, and that's kind of like Neoplatonism. But I want to get back to that in a moment. And so what was this word, even if you just simplify it to one, and not the whole chain of them? Was it God, or was it something else? Like, this is already the question in the debate between Arius and Athanasius, which also had to do with the divine logos through which everything was created. Was that of the same nature as God, or was it like God? In Greek, homoousios, of the same nature, or homoiousios, of like nature. So what was the answer Philo gave? Well, he didn't. He, as I understand him, he retreated into a kind of ambiguity that, and partly because he must not have wanted to deny monotheism. But the problem is, well, are you saying God did it? Which seems a little embarrassing almost, this transcendental deity. I mean, it's hard to get from that to Genesis, where Genesis 2, where God is making a guy like a sculpture out of clay, literally getting his hands dirty, having hands. And so, okay, God didn't exactly do it. Or who revealed the law on Mount Sinai? Whose finger was it on the plates? Well, God? Could God descend to that? Or was it an angel of God? Because even in Exodus, it speaks of it as an angel in the burning bush. So you don't want to say it's somebody other than God, but you don't want to make God a creature among creatures. As if he were the king of the gods or something. So he introduces a note of ambiguity that I think is central to the later Trinity. Are the three one? Well, in a sense they are, but they're not simply the same thing, as some would argue. Well, it's just one God showing himself in a different likeness or acting in a different mode, and now that's not good enough, because the threeness has to be integral to God. Otherwise, you're kind of making the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit into illusory manifestations, like in Hinduism. There's one divine being, Brahman, but he appears to worshipers in different faces: Vishnu, Shiva, Krishna, and so on. They're all God, but they're all like faces of God, or masks of God, like Joseph Campbell used to say. Okay, I want to return to who formulated the Trinity in a moment. Well, this isn't a bad time to do that, I guess. Tertullian was the first to speak of three personae in the Godhead, but we don't exactly know for sure what he meant. The current usage of persona, literally it was these masks that actors wore, like the smiling and the frowning when...
Did the church get its teaching of the Trinity from Philo of Alexandria? The answer is yes. I'm the author of Philo's Trinity, and I've been saying that for over 6 years. My research has led me to not only believe that Philo influenced the church fathers, but he actually gave them the teachings of the Trinity doctrine. I stumbled across this video where Dr. Price does agree that Philo mapped out the direction of Trinitarianism, which I put letter A. And he is right that Philo did map out this direction, but he did more than that, as I will explain in a few minutes. Letter B, that Philo's view was an abstract view, is correct, because Philo employed what is known as the allegorical method of interpretation. And it was Philo who took verses or passages from the Old Testament and he allegorized them, thus giving them another meaning apart from the meaning that it had or that the Bible teaches. Philo was an expert in giving it a different interpretation. Letter C, the Logos wisdom came from Philo. Oh yes. In my research I found out that it was Philo who started putting the Logos and Sophia together. And by combining them at times, he made it seem like God had someone else apart from himself that would do the biddings and the works that God would not do, because he did not want to touch the material things. That was a teaching. And so Philo came up with the Logos wisdom teaching. And yes, he took some of it from Proverbs 8, because it says that in the beginning there wisdom was there. But he also took it from the Apocrypha book of the Catholic Church, which is found in the Old Testament, and the Wisdom of Solomon it is called, or Syriac. And it is this book that explains that wisdom, even though it was feminine, was a part of God that also created, that also did all kinds of things. Sophia was represented by a dove and by the Holy Spirit. So yes, the Logos wisdom teaching did come from Philo of Alexandria. And letter D, Dr. Price mentions that Arius and Athanasius battled over the meaning of the Logos, the Greek Logos of Philo of Alexandria. And that is correct, because it was that teaching that went into the Nicene Council. Not only that teaching, but other teachings like God from God and light from light, that also came from Philo. But yes, they argued about the Logos being the pre-existent Son. And so this is the battle that went on at the Council of Nicaea 325. And letter E, Dr. Price says that Philo retreated into ambiguity. All I can say about that is that Philo was a Jew, and he wanted to keep his Jewish roots. But yet, because he was into philosophy and mysticism and so forth, and this allegorical method brought him to a place of no return, because he taught that God was one, but at the same time he could be three. And he made this into a mystery because no one really understood that. And Philo had a mystical experience that he writes about in his books, where he says that a voice told him while he was meditating that God was never alone, but with him were two other powers. He later would call them persons. He would call the I am the middle person of the three. And other things he taught, like that they were equal and so forth, you know. But then letter F is where I disagree totally with Dr. Price and a whole lot of other PhDs or Trinitarian scholars also. I disagree that it was Tertullian who developed the idea of the Trinity, and that he also spoke about, the first one to speak about the three persons. All of that can be found in the writings of Philo of Alexandria. And I've been trying to educate the public, and I realize that I'm sort of like a pioneer in this, because no one before me had ever taught that Philo gave us the Trinity. But I have been doing this because I feel a calling to teach and re-educate people, especially doctors in theology, that it was Philo who gave us the Trinity. He didn't just map it out. He didn't just give us ideas. No, he gave us the Trinity. And the early church fathers took up the teachings of Philo and they placed him in the church. And at the Council of Nicaea, they debated until the Athanasius won out. And so this is the history of the Trinity doctrine. But yes, I want to correct that it was Philo of Alexandria who gave us the Trinity. And this can be proven with his writings, with the writings of the early church fathers, and even the writings of Eusebius in his ecclesiastical history.